Einen wunderschönen zweiten Tag auf der Austria Comic Con 2025. Auch heute starten wir mit unseren Stargast-Panels mit etwas ganz Besonderem. Ich habe Angst, because the guy that's coming right up is way taller, way stronger than me, and he knows how to force choke people. So let's see how this goes. But ladies and gentlemen, make a lot of noise for Spencer Wilding.
I like it back on table.
That's actually my first question to you today, because I'm sure that you grew up with Star Wars and watching science fiction and all of these amazing movies. Do you still remember the first time you watched Darth Vader, either on the big or the small screen, and how you felt seeing him?
Yeah, got a funny story, I'll tell you now. But first of all, I'd just like to say hello. Hope you're having a great weekend. I'm loving it here. Thanks for the family love. Right, so in 1977, when I was 5 years old, my dad took me to see Star Wars. And back then, it was like, wow, it was like 20 years ahead of its time. Space cruisers, the lot. So we went into the cinema. I was only 5, and he snuck me to the right, and I thought we were going to the left. And I'm sitting watching this big screen, eating my popcorn, drinking my Coca-Cola, waiting for this big battleship to come over the top of me, starship, and then there was just a guy in bed with a woman. I was like, this is strange. My dad didn't want to see Star Wars, so he snuck me in to see Pink Panther instead. Yeah, man, just, you know, if they don't understand me. So the next day, my mum took me to see Star Wars, so it was all good. That's my first memories.
And how would you have reacted if at that point in your life someone told you, one time you're going to be this dude?
You know what? Through my whole life, you know, I always knew I was going to play this character of all characters, and hence Darth Vader.
That's the DJing. Yeah. The thing is, I think because Darth Vader is such an omnipresence, you can say, an imposing, tall character, just like you. So you could say you were born to play this sort of characters. But do you remember which character or actor it actually was that gave you the feeling, I want to pursue this career in my life, I want to do just that?
You know what? All the way through my life, people, you know when people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What's your dream? People used to say to that me when I was a kid, and I said, oh, I'm going to be a movie star. And when I live in a little town called Rhyl in North Wales, they didn't have any movie stars, you know, 50 years ago. So people used to look at me strange, but I always knew I was connected to my path. I knew I'd go into the sports world. I'll be a champion kickboxer. And then I got signed up with a sports agency that took me into the film career, and then more of an acting agent late down the line. So I've done over 50 films now. I started on the Harry Potter films. I was on the Batman Begins, and I was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Beowulf and Grendel. So many films, IMDb that. So I've done a lot of characters out there you don't know I've played, but I've played them, and you're probably a fan of the productions. Yeah, I've been very lucky and blessed.
Do you still remember the very first audition you went to and how it went down?
Well, I was severely dyslexic coming through, so I knew I was going to be in the films, but I didn't go to any acting college or anything like that. I couldn't read or write, so it was very late in life because of my dyslexia. And so I was spending all my money to go to London once a week for an audition. I'd go to an audition, I couldn't even read or write. And so I was just like rolling with it, you know. And then the phone went very, very quiet after a year of auditions. Probably getting around, you send it as an actor that can't read. So I learned how to read, sight reading lessons. There's different sort of ways for dyslexia people to lock the dialogue in. And as soon as I found out, I was like, wow, I can remember, I can do all this, I can do that, and learn how to read. Then I started getting more auditions. But I'm an action actor. I played the werewolf in Harry Potter. That was my first role, and that was in 2002. So that was my niche, like action actor, creature performer. Then later on down the line, I got better with the dialogue. Then I get a few lines here, a few lines there. Then I get lead roles. So that's how it all started.
But the thing is, when I think of having to act without the ability of speaking, about the ability of dialogue, I think this is much harder because you have to use your body and only your body language to transport your character, maybe through masks and thick layers of makeup. How do you go about that?
Well, it's physicality, but you're giving off a different energy. So, like we were saying yesterday, I've played a wooden king for Doctor Who and several other characters, but the character, whenever you seen him, he was still, very still, He's like a tree in the forest, but he was still alive. So your energy, you turn that latex into beating flesh. You give the character a heart and soul, and then all of a sudden the character starts to breathe, although there's hardly any movement there, but the camera would feel the energy, and then you were transfixed, you were magneted towards it.
And I'm asking that apart from the creatures that you played in so many movies, I noted that you were in Hooligans 3, which is basically a very intense martial arts, heavy franchise with a lot of good fight scenes, and you are martial artist, kickboxing instructor. So how different was your approach to doing action and stunts and fighting towards being a creature character?
Well, the physicality in the martial arts was part of my acting career. Yep. It was building blocks, So to be a creature, you have to be very physical. To do a martial arts fight film, you've got to know there's not many action actors that kickbox and box on screen that haven't actually done it for real life. There's a lot of people out there. It's like in Green Street 3, I was the lead baddie. I was the head of Millwall, where I fight Scott Adkins, but there was like 10 other fights. I broke my ribs in one of the scenes. That's, it's still full contact acting. So you're still having a fight with them, but you know what's coming. So you roll out of it and sell it. But sometimes you might not, and take it,
I think what many people don't know, because Game of Thrones is always a big staple at cons. We have Christian sitting here, but you were also in Game of Thrones as a White Walker in 2011. What can you tell us about your experience on the Game of Thrones set?
Yeah, so I played the first White Walker on the first series, first episode, and we filmed that 15 years ago or something like that. So I was the White Walker that was running around the forest, chopping the heads off, throwing the head. So we all know that, and it was the first introduction to the White Walkers. So we filmed that in Belfast, and it was in the middle of the summer, but the whole set was snow. But it wasn't snow, it was white paper. It was a movie cheat. And my characters, they tend to show off a little bit. I remember playing the White Walker, and there was the length of this room, there was a camera track. So it was a profile to the White Walkers. So I'd be running like that, and the camera would be on me, and my characters tend to show off. So I threw up in the air, threw a mad shape, and landed. So I thought, there's a ditch there. It's 6 or 7 feet across. Yeah, I'll clear that. So I'm running, I throw a shape showing off, and I landed wrong, fell back into the ditch, come out with a frog on my head. So yeah, real water, real frog.
Did you have any idea when you made Game of Thrones how big this whole thing is going to get?
It was, because back then nobody knew about Game of Thrones, only the books, So I didn't read too much when I was a kid. So I was at a Comic-Con in America about 2 or 3 years after filming the Game of Thrones. And there was this banner, bigger, twice the size of that, saying, "The Game of Thrones." And I thought, we've done that. Somebody said, what did you do? I said, I was the first White Walker, me and Ian White. And they went, there's another picture for the table. Woo, woo, woo. They loved it. Game of Thrones is huge. It's a beast.
Yeah. And do you have one really standout favorite character out of all the ones that you have portrayed thus far, and why?
You know what? I've played that many characters and I hold love for every one of them, you know? I love playing the creatures. I remember being in Austria, filming in the mountains dressed as a Yeti, you know? For Walker's crisps called Monster Munch. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. One of our best crisps back home. And it's a funny story. So we left the sunshine, cable cars, right up in the mountains where there was snow. And nobody knew we were up there. There was one Yeti, 3 production people, director, producer, yeah? So I'm just walking around in snow, I'm dressed as a Yeti, taking it all in, and I can hear all these like kids' voices miles away, just coming up the mountain. I thought, gonna have to have a little bit of fun here. So these kids, there's 100 Austrian kids walking up the mountain with their teachers. And because I'm a Yeti, I'm standing in snow, I'm camouflaged. They couldn't see me, so I'm just standing still. And they get closer and closer. I'm thinking, they haven't even seen me. And they got like 10 feet near me, and I go, "Bruh!" And they just went, "Blah! Yeti!" And they just ran. But the teachers were in front of the kids going down the mountain. So when we had to get all the kids together, say sorry, take some pictures, and everything was good. But I did set off some rumours, because my feet, this big, so I was doing little footprints everywhere, so people would have said, "There's a Yeti in the mountains."
Out of all the different styles of makeup, prosthetics, masks that you have worn, what is the one that you personally find the most comfortable, the most, that you like to work with the most?
You know, I do like friendly characters, you know, and like the Yeti, he's not scary, you know, he's very, because if the character's real, like Darth Vader's a real presence and spirit of Darth Vader, he's real. So when I played the Yeti, I thought, wow, Yetis are real, because I've got the spirit and presence of him, so he's real. And they're very, very friendly characters, you know. They're fun, but they're very family. They're very family, but they don't like humans. It's not like they don't like humans, they're wary of them, you know. So, yeah, the Yetis are very real, which is quite a warm feeling inside, you know what I mean? Bigfoot's real. So I love them sort of characters. Long makeups, like in the Game of Thrones, I was the Nuruk. And then the werewolf suit wasn't a makeup, it was an animatronic head. And we were inside the suit, me and Marnix van der Broek, as a Dutch ballet dancer. And the suit, if you've ever been to Harry Potter World, you see the suit. And you think, how did they fit inside that suit? They trained us, I was 5 stone lighter, very, very thin. And they trained us for 3 months to become the werewolf. Because you were on stilts. You were the Adam's apple of the werewolf's nose, that's our nose. And there was an animatronic head here, and 2 puppeteers working off camera, working the mouth and the head. So that's real. 99% of it, what you see on the screen is CGI, but it's a really wide shot where I strike Alan Rickman and all the kids fall back down. Do you remember that scene at the tree? Yeah. So that's real. Cool.
When you went on to play Darth Vader, did you take Dave Prowse's approach to the role as an inspiration? Do you want to approach the character as much like him or as little as him as possible? Or did you have a different inspiration for your take on Darth Vader's character?
Well, Darth Vader is Darth Vader. He will never change. There's one spirit and presence of Darth Vader. He will use many actors over these next 1,000 years. So he'll always be Darth Vader. He won't change, you know? He'll always be him. The way he walks, the way he moves, the way he chokes, the presence and spirit will always be Vader, you know? So you can't play around with him. You can't make him your own. He is Darth Vader. And that's why he's the most baddest villain on silver screen. Number 1, he'll never be beaten. It's because he's Vader. He's the dark side.
Can you tell us something about the casting process, how you landed the role of Darth Vader?
So it's a long process. So my agency calls me up and said, Spen, can you come in? We've got a self-tape. So I said, what is it? And they go, we don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? I'm 43 films in. I've never had a self-tape where they don't tell us what's going on. Because it was very, very secretive. Because when Vader was coming back, he hasn't been on screen for a long time with Rogue One. It was rumoured to be coming back, so it was very, who's going to be playing him, you know? So he said, Spen coming in. So I come to the studios, to the self-tape, the casting at my agency, and they go, what do they want? They said, they want a guy to walk around the room with authority. That's it. Okay, so I walked around the room with authority. Then they called us back the next week, said, right, Spen, we've got a bit of dialogue now. So what is it? No, still won't release it. This is crazy. Okay, sounds. So we did the dialogue. And then the next week, we got another third call back. This is over a process of 3 or 4 weeks. And said, so what is it? He said, right, okay, we know it's Star Wars. Okay, cool. Do we know what character it is? And they said, no. I said, I think I know. He said, how do you know? He said, because the dialogue, I'm doing the lines, and at the end of the line, it's going, oh, come on. A little bit. Can you just explain? That was a good one. So yeah, then the last audition was very, very special. It was at Pinewood Studios. We all know Pinewood Studios. So they took us into Pinewood Studios. They took us to the top of one of the buildings, and there was a little like a curtain when you walk into the room, and you pull the curtain back. There was the helmet, the gloves, the pants, the boots, everything. And we got to audition. The last audition was in the suit as Vader, in the suit. That's when the real presence of spirit takes over you. That's where you get the job or you don't. And Vader, I feel very honoured. The Emperor chose myself to help out with the character and be the character. And the rest is history. There's not many people have played Vader, so it's a special character.
I always find these stories amazing, how secretive these productions are, and that you audition for roles, you don't even know what the role is. But let's just think that you have the choice. You can select any character from any property ever released. What would be your number one go-to character you would want to play?
I couldn't choose one, there'd be several, because it's just so...
We would have time for 7.
Yeah, several, yeah. So when I was a kid, I used to love watching Edward Woodward, The Equalizer. Do you remember that? Maybe yes. The original. So I looked at him like a father figure. I just loved him. I used to sneak down the stairs, and the door would be open a little bit in the jar, and I'd stick behind the door because it was on at 9 o'clock at night, and I'd be in bed at that time. So I'd be just looking through the door, just watching him. I was just fascinated by it. And then I was Monkey Magic. Loved Monkey Magic. I would have loved to play the monkey, you know. And then Wizard of Oz. I would have loved to play the lion in Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
That was great, you know, things like that. I loved all them shows, but that's what inspired me, you know. And I loved Bruce Lee, you know, Jackie Chan, all them lot, and with the martial arts, I loved all them. And the boxing, Muhammad Ali, you know, Muhammad Ali. My uncle Carl, who passed away today, gutted, absolutely gutted, but he passed away today, but he sparred with Muhammad Ali, you know, my uncle Carl did, you know, it was amazing. Yeah, very special man.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It is what it is.
But we would have time for one last question coming from the audience. Does anybody want to close out Spencer's panel today? Yes, please.
Yes, we've got one. Come on in. Yeah. Dark side. Woohoo.
Of course. How heavy was the Darth Vader suit?
Oh, how heavy was the Darth Vader suit?
Well, Mr. Prowse said it was the most difficult, heaviest suit he's ever worn, right? I've worn so many suits, so I've got like we were saying before, when you had an autograph, I've got a 1 to 10 in difficulty. He's only a 2.5 for me. I've been in suits that have physically put me on the floor. There's a place in the body you can take, and if you don't listen to your body just switches off. Mm-hmm. I've took my body there twice. twice. Once with the Yeti suit, and twice for the Wolfman, Universal Wolfman. It just switched off. I was doing 21-hour back-to-backs, and in the end, my body went. It's a safety thing. You can't, no matter what. It's very rare of anybody able to take their body there, but I did. You know, the character took me there, and it just switched off. Dropped on the floor for 10 seconds and woke up like, what?
And speaking of the Wolfman, if I recall this correctly, the Wolfman from 2010 is one of the very few horror films that actually got an Oscar for the special effects and including the costume that you wore.
That Rick Baker, I love Rick Baker.
Yes.
Right, he's an iconic living legend, and I helped get him his 7th Oscar.
Yes.
Because I was under the makeup. So it was, you know, I did over 110 makeups on that job. You know, Benny was in a 6 or 7. So, but it was my thing. I was the Wolfman. You know, so they let me get on with it. You know, but Benny went in there, fair dues. He went in there. It's not a very nice makeup. It's a beautiful makeup to look, but it's a very long process. You know, some actors don't like that. I find it very relaxing. I can sit in that chair for 10 hours, do what you want with me, because it's incredible to watch such living legends and you know, top makeup artists. Making the craft, you know, it's amazing. And then you come around and there's the Wolfman or Frankenstein or Game of Thrones or this, that, and the other. These characters are just awesome, really special.
And especially it was Rick Baker who I think got his first Oscar for the American Werewolf.
Weird.
So
huh?
I don't know if it was the first, but that was also. Well, sadly, this is all we have time to talk today, but thank you so much for coming out. Thank you all for coming out, but especially a warm goodbye round of applause for Spencer Wilding.
Thank you. Awesome. Have a great weekend. Thanks for having me.